Rotate device. Okay, I can't rotate it back. Doggone it. All right. So we're going to do that thing you should probably never do, and that is record a live video while you're driving. I mean, there's no telling how the quality is going to be, and I am going to be trying to pay attention to the road as I drive, but I really felt the need to, in that my job allowed me a lot of time to respond to comments on my channel. And one thing I tend to do is when a person starts coming in, and you can there are different flavors of a troll, let's say. Some are far more annoying than others, and I have zero tolerance for the really annoying ones, the ones that just start saying you are the devil and all this kind of stuff. The other end of that is kind of what I felt like I was dealing with a little bit today, and so I kind of dug my I kind of prepped myself and went in and started having some conversations, and it is so very, very, very annoying. And if you guys feel like I'm repeating myself, just imagine how I feel. I feel like I am repeating myself continually. Okay, Scott, what are you repeating all the time? Number one, I always feel like I have to repeat and set it up to these people. Number one, you're not dealing with a Baptist that just decided he was going to write some stuff about Adventists. No, 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 no. Former Adventist, third generation, ordained elder, educated from kindergarten through 12th grade in Adventist schools, steeped in Adventism. Okay, so just know that. Holy cow! So that's the first thing. The second thing is, holy cow! It comes down to this. Sorry for the jumping around. Every time I try to rest my arm, it's bouncing. It comes down to this. The Adventists just want to get you. They just want to start basically saying how you're being disobedient and you've got to obey. You know, faith without works is dead, and all that is fine. This is what it all boils down to. Every single thing. If we could just start attacking it right off the top, we'd save so much time. And that is, it's about the Sabbath. Shocking. It's about the Sabbath every single time. That's all that they really care about. Because I pointed out to a few of them today. So tell me, give me examples of where you've heard Protestant preachers preach on how it's important to commit adultery, how it's fine that you would commit murder, that it's fine that you steal or cheat on your taxes. Go ahead, I'll wait. Give me that example. Of course not. Of course not, because there's no Protestant church that does that. Protestant churches teach and preach morality. They preach and teach morality from beginning to end. Their issue is about the Sabbath. Okay, it's all about the Sabbath. So what I feel like today, I've shared this before. When I left Adventism, I can remember, remember, I'd received this book called like Believers in the New Covenant. It was by this pastor, former Adventist pastor named Greg. Doggone it, I always forget his name, and I hate that. It may come back to me shortly. But this guy, this pastor, was in the Ohio Conference. He had been, when I was a senior in high school, he came to my school, Mount Vernon Academy, which, praise the Lord, has closed down. Anyway, he came to that academy my senior year and did Greg Taylor. He came and did a week of prayer for us. So I remember him. He was an Adventist. And then I remember when a few years later, probably 8 to 10 years later, when I was an Adventist, ordained elder, all of a sudden he left the church. He wrote this thesis or this manifesto or whatever about why he was leaving, and he suddenly became the enemy even of me. In fact, I was tasked, listen to me, I was tasked with like going down to Mount Vernon Academy and trying to do some damage control, because you had him as a problem, and there was also another former Adventist teacher at Mount Vernon Academy who had seen the light. He read Galatians, and he ended up causing some trouble. So they had me go down and do damage control. So why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that to tell you this. When I finally came to my senses, if you will, you know who one of the first people was that I reached out to? Greg Taylor. This is before I really had Google or anything like that, but somehow I was able to get a hold of Greg Taylor, and I reached out to him. You want to know one of the very first questions I asked him? You ready for it? 3, 2, 1. Why would God put a ceremonial law in the Ten Commandments? That was my question. And it might be a question that some of you, if you're a former Adventist, you may have asked that same thing. Why would God put a ceremonial law in the Ten Commandments? And you know something, I think about it more, a better question might be to me or to the Adventist, why wouldn't God put a ceremonial law in the Ten Commandments? Now, if an Adventist is being totally honest, their answer would have to be, because if you put a ceremonial law in there, that means we can't say that the whole thing is everlasting, that it's all this kind of stuff it's in heaven. Because we know if it's ceremonial, because we preach and teach all the time that the Day of Atonement no longer matters, the Passover. Why? Because all these things pointed to Christ and his work, build those, and those are no longer obligatory. And so that's why they need it in the Ten Commandments, because they believe somehow, because it's etched in stone. Oh, it's arguments, and if you see me getting frustrated, it's because I bang my head against the wall. Now, in their defense, they haven't watched all my other videos. Thankfully, I mean, imagine if I were examining Adventism, okay, with like hundreds, it seems like hundreds of videos. I have a little over 50, but they've clearly not watched my videos where I cover this at length. So my point is, I asked that very question, why is it? And Greg Taylor's answer to me was a really good one to me. If you recall, what he said was that the way he perceived it is that the Ten Commandments were like this commandment. His answer was, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he added all the law. So I'm trying to reconnect. I don't know if this is going to cut out. I'm going to continue to talk. These are two principles, and they are fleshed out by the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments, the 6 and the 4, are just further workings out of what it looks like to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and what it looks like to love your neighbor as yourself. And guess what? As we all know, there are really 613-ish laws that God gave the Israelites. Guess what? Those were just further fleshing out the 10, which were further fleshing out the 2. So if ultimately loving the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and this is the big ones, fine. In the 10 Commandments, we have the 10 tenets, if you will, the 10 terms of the covenant with Israel, and it kind of makes sense that in the middle of it is the commandment that is seen as the sign of that covenant. Circumcision, sign of the Abrahamic. You know what I'm talking about. That covenant, circumcision, the Sabbath was the sign of the covenant with Israel. Okay, so the important question that Adventists need to start asking is, why do we think it's moral? I'll give you 2 quick answers, which I've given a billion times, I feel, why I believe it was the Sabbath was ceremonial. 1, Leviticus 23 lists the Sabbath, Day of Atonement, Feast of Weeks, Passover, all those. Now, again, I'm not saying it's ceremonial because of proximity, as Adventists would say the Sabbath is moral because of proximity. No, Sabbath is, I'm saying that to simply show you, so if you go there and you read it, you'll see some similarities. You know what would have been odd is that in the middle of all those holy days, it would have said, and also thou shalt not commit murder or sleep with your neighbor's wife. Okay, because those would have stood out because, wow, they were kind of going a certain way, and then this one kind of takes a hard left. That's because if you look at the ceremonial laws, they're all similar in that they all happen on a specific day, they all happen in a specific time. Work is prohibited. Okay, that's number one, that why I believe that the Sabbath was ceremonial. But the most important one, the most powerful argument for why it was ceremonial is Jesus himself. When asked, I believe is in Matthew 12, when the disciples are accused of breaking the Sabbath, what does Jesus compare breaking the Sabbath to? Oh, that's right. He compared it to two ceremonial laws, namely when David ate the bread of the presence, which was unlawful, and yet he was seen as guiltless. And two, when the priests go into the Sabbath and profane the Sabbath by working in the temple on the Sabbath. Both are scenarios in which people are breaking ceremonial laws and still found guiltless. So to the Adventist, look, the onus is on you. Give me a reasonable, give me, like, come up with something, man. Come up with something that's remotely substantial as proof that the Sabbath is a moral law. I will wait. I will wait. But please, for the love of all that's good and holy, do not be so foolish as to equate it to proximity or because it's engraved in stone. Come on. You have to be embarrassed if you would try to present such an argument to me. Prove to me that it's moral. Prove to me that it's moral. Whew, my blood pressure has got to be sky high. Anyhow, this is what I've been dealing with all day. And the conversations, they were never rude to me. There's probably some little sarcasm on both sides. You know, there's definitely some, and you guys probably can read through and see some of these posts, and you can just kind of tell the person, English isn't their first language. You know, they're probably not from the United States, is my guess. Maybe they live here now, but um, the point is like I'm always very interested to know, where did you come from? Meaning, when did you convert to Adventism? Or, you know, where in the world are you? Like, are you in Africa, where the Adventist church is growing, you know, substantially? How did you come to this? Those are things I'd love to hear. I just don't think many of these people were born and raised Adventist or had the exposure and experience that I did. But I'm not calling them stupid, Jesse, I promise. All right, everybody, that's it. I got that off my chest, and guess what? I'm now going fishing. That's right. I'm not going to post videos about fishing, but I'm heading out there now. So, anyhow, hope you guys have a great week, and God bless you guys. And pray for me. Pray for Test the Prophet. Pray for Miles. Even this new site, Examining Adventism. Pray for all of them because they need it. We'll see you guys later. Take care.